today we are going to be going over our power rankings for Week 16 of the 2025 season. Can't believe we're already in Week 16. The playoffs are almost here, so we'll see how these last, I think, 3 weeks shape up for the playoffs. But let's go over. We got to go over these Week 16 power rankings, of course. First tier we have not a lot of movement in not only in this first tier, but really in the whole power rankings. But the first tier all stays the same. The bottom four teams with the Raiders at 32, the Jets at 31, the Browns at 30, and the Titans at 29. Raiders got blown out by the Eagles after the Eagles have had a bad stretch of games. Jets got blown out by the Jags. Browns got blown out by the Bears. And the Titans lost to the Niners. It wasn't a complete blowout, especially compared to the Browns, Jets, and Raiders. The Titans' offense looked pretty decent, but they still lost by, I believe, 13 points to a good Niners team. I think it's pretty safe to say that these are the bottom four teams, and since they all lost pretty easily, I don't feel a reason to really move them around. Especially, I feel like the Titans deserve to be 29, and the Raiders deserve to be 32, but I think you can change the Browns or Jets either way, but I'd personally just stick with the Browns at 30 just because they looked much better offensively with Shedeur Sanders at quarterback until last week. Next tier, we have the Giants at 28, the Commanders at 27, the Saints at 26, the Falcons at 25, and the Cardinals at 24. Again, not a lot of movement here. I basically just swapped Commanders Giants because they played head to head. Commanders won. Not only did they sweep the Giants, but they won this most recent week, and they also won with their more accurate roster to the entire season. Because when they beat the Giants, it was week one, they were all healthy, but now they beat them with all the injuries they've had. So this is more of a equal representation of the Commanders' overall season. And since they beat the Giants, I think it made sense just to flip flop those teams. They're definitely better than the Titans, Browns, Jets, and Raiders, but they are. I still think teams like the Falcons, Saints, and Cardinals are just playing better than them, especially recently with the Saints at 26 coming off their back-to-back wins against the Bucks and the Panthers. The only reason they didn't move up is because the Falcons also beat the Bucks last week or this most recent week. And I could have put both those teams above the Cardinals because those are decent wins against the Panthers and the Buccaneers that the Falcons and Saints had. But the Cardinals, despite their bad record, have been a very competitive, bad team. So I didn't want to. I still would take the Cardinals over the Falcons and the Saints, just narrowly. The Cardinals also beat the Saints earlier in the year, and they play the Falcons this week. So, despite the Falcons and Saints getting good wins, I still kept them at 25 and 26 just because I like the Cardinals a little bit more than the Falcons and Saints. And again, the reason the Saints didn't jump the Falcons is because the Falcons also beat the Bucks this week. So again, not a lot of movement in these bottom 7 teams or 9 teams. Next tier, a little more movement. We got the Bengals at 23, the Dolphins at 22, the Vikings at 21, and the Chiefs at 20. Bengals at 23. I gave them a little, maybe a little high ranking because the defense hadn't looked that bad as of a recent, and Joe Burrow and the offense was looking pretty good. But then they go into Baltimore and can't put up a single point against the Ravens defense. It wasn't a great game. Um, they're still, I think, in that next tier just because Joe Burrow really elevates that offense, as you can see. And the defense this season has shown at times it can be okay. They're just not a consistent enough defense to be above the teams in front of them, in my opinion. But I think I just had them a little higher, which is why maybe their drop seems more drastic. But I had the Ravens at 20 going into this week, and you lost 24-0 to the Ravens, so that's why they dropped all the way to 23. Dolphins at 22, I have them staying put. I mean, it wasn't a good game against Pittsburgh. They had like -8 yards in like the entire third quarter. They only really put up points when the game was over. There's a lot of garbage time. The two Darren Waller touchdowns were basically garbage time touchdowns. Two was now benched, so I still think they're playing better more recently than the Bengals have because they did have that win streak. The defense at times against Pittsburgh looked all right, and also at times they didn't look very good. I think they're very interchangeable with Cincinnati, but I think the conditions of that game really didn't favor them. Tua and the Dolphins in the cold against a Steelers team that can play very well. So I don't want to put too much on that Dolphins loss. So I do still have them above the Bengals. However, the Vikings win over Dallas on Sunday night is enough for me to put them ahead of Miami at 21. JJ McCarthy has looked pretty good the last 2, 3 weeks. He's starting to gain some confidence, which that's if you can get that out of your. I know it's Dallas and also Washington last week, but McCarthy's playing much better. The defense is still, for the most part, good, and they also, I'm pretty sure they blew out the Bengals earlier in the year with Carson Wentz at quarterback, even though Wentz didn't do anything in the game. Yeah, they beat the Bengals 48-10 early in the year. Now, that's not the why they're ahead of the Bengals, but it's interesting to look back at it that the Bengals are still below the Vikings, even that on considering they also got blown out earlier. And then the Chiefs at 20, they dropped down from 19 to 20. Mahomes is out for the year. Who knows how long he's going to be out next year? I think I saw something that Andy Reid thinks they might be able to return to the beginning of the next season, which would be crazy. But they just haven't been great. I mean, they've had a tough schedule and they've played a lot of close games. Like a lot of their losses are close losses to good teams. They're just not winning those close games like they won last year. That's pretty much the big difference, I think, in their in this season and last season is how they're doing in those close games. And it's just been a disappointing season for the Chiefs. Eliminated from the playoffs for the first time, I think, in like 11 years. They're not going to be in the playoffs. So they go down all the way to 20. Um, it wasn't a bad loss to the Chargers. Losing to the Chargers isn't a bad thing. It's more of that they're eliminated from the playoffs. And so what I did is the next 19 teams are all of the teams that are either in the playoffs or fighting for the playoffs. So that's why the Chiefs are at that 20 spot because they are officially eliminated from the playoffs. So next here we have the Bucks at 19, the Panthers at 18, the Cowboys at 17, the Ravens at 16, the Steelers at 15, and the Colts at 14. I know the Bucks lost to the Falcons, but again, the only reason they jumped up 2 spots is because they're still in playoff contention and the Chiefs and Vikings are eliminated. I thought it'd be cool to sort of split the eliminated teams from the non-eliminated teams. So that's why the Bucks went up 2 spots, even though it wasn't the best performance, at least defensively, against Atlanta. Panthers at 18, coming off their loss to the Saints, they dropped down 1 spot. I think it's fair to put them and the Bucks right next to each other. Same record. They're about to play each other this week, and I think they play each other the last week to decide the division. I don't want to put too much. Like I'm not going to severely drop the Panthers for their loss to the Saints. I still think they're better. They played better than teams like Kansas City, Minnesota, Miami, Cincinnati. And again, they're still in playoff contention, even though it's because of the weak division. But they definitely are at the bottom of the playoff teams. Cowboys at 17. Bad loss to the Vikings. I mean, defense continues to struggle. Once again, though, if you look at the run defense was pretty good. Aaron Jones had 34 yards. Jordan Mason had 29 yards. McCarthy had 15. It was a pretty good run defensive game. And that's what we've been getting from the Cowboys defense ever since they got Quinn Williams. Their run defense has taken a massive jump, but their pass defense is still really bad. They still can't really cover anybody. Um, so they go down 2 spots after their loss to Minnesota. I still think they're a better team than Minnesota, hence why they're up 4 spots on them. One, again, they're still in the playoff contention, and I just think they are a better team than Minnesota, especially with how they've looked since the Quinn Williams trade. I think they've just been an overall better team. Minnesota just got them on that Sunday night game. And if Brandon Aubrey can make more of his kicks, I think maybe Dallas actually wins that game. Ravens at 16, going up from 20 to 16. They got a big win against Cincinnati. They dropped after their loss to Pittsburgh, but now they're back up after their win over Cincinnati. They're still right in there for the AFC North with Pittsburgh, who is at 15 after their win against Miami. Again, so you got Cowboys who are barely hanging on to the playoffs, and then you have the two bad division leaders and second place teams in the Panthers, Bucks, and then Steelers, Ravens towards the bottom of the playoff teams. And then the Colts at 14. I kept them at 14, even though Pittsburgh got a win, Baltimore got a win, and they lost. It's because honestly, they didn't play too bad. Philip Rivers clearly isn't the same quarterback, right? He's 45 years old. He doesn't really got it. But the defense played very well. I mean, the Seahawks got in field goal range 6 times and they couldn't get in the end zone once. So Colts defense really impressed me, and I just don't obviously don't know what we're going to get offensively from the Colts, but going into Seattle, one of the toughest places to play with a new quarterback who's 45 years old, it wasn't a bad performance, so I didn't want to penalize them too much. Um, I don't know who they play. They play the Niners next week, and then the Jags and the Texans. So that's three really tough teams. So they can hang in with those teams, even if they don't end up with the best record. If they lose those games, I probably won't drop them too much because it's going to be tough for them to compete in those games. So it'd be impressive if they can, just like they did with Seattle. Next tier, we have it's a very short tier. It's the Eagles at 13, the Chargers at 12, and the Lions at 11. Because I don't really, I think these are playoff teams. I think all three of these teams will end up in the playoffs. And I don't know about Detroit, but I just don't really trust these teams. Philly got their nice win against the Raiders. I'm not going to put too much stock into them beating the Raiders. I mean, you beat the Raiders. Congratulations. Everyone thought you were going to somehow lose that game because of what happened in 2023 and what we've seen from them this season as well. So I can't praise them too much for beating the Raiders. And then the Chargers, they barely beat the Chiefs, and they just recently beat the Eagles. So the Eagles have to be below the Chargers. So that's why they stay at 13. Chargers stay at 12. And then the Lions at 11. It's not a bad thing to lose to the Rams. So I didn't want to punish them too much. I know the Eagles beat the Lions, and they have a better record than the Lions overall, but I had the Lions at 8 going into this week, and you lose to the Rams by 7 points. So I moved them down 3 spots, but I didn't want to move them too far down for losing to the best team in football. Spoiler alert. Um, I don't I don't know why I wouldn't keep the Rams at number one. But next here we have the top end contenders, the bottom half of the top 10 teams. The Jags at 10, the Niners at 9, the Texans at 8, the Bears at 7, and the Packers at 6. Honestly, the reason that the Texans, Jags, and Niners move up is because the lines went down. I mean, the Jags beat the Jets, who are 31. The Niners beat the Titans, who are 29, and the Texans beat the Cardinals, who are 24. I wasn't going to move those teams up significantly for those wins. They do go up because they did get wins where the Lions got a loss, and they have been playing very, very well. So I didn't want to, it wasn't a bad thing to win those games, but I'm not going to put them up super high just for those wins. And then the Bears at 7, same thing kind of, beating the Browns by how many points? Beating the Browns by 28. And then the Packers with their loss against the Broncos, the only reason they didn't go down even though they lost is it wasn't a total blowout by any means. They lost by 8 points and they beat the Bears more recently. So I think they deserve to be above the Bears, but I wasn't going to move the Packers down to 8 and put the Bears at 9. So I kept the Bears at 7 and kept the Packers at 6. However, it's more that the Broncos got benefited for beating the Packers than the Packers did for losing to the Broncos. At 5, we have the New England Patriots going down 3 spots to number 5 after their loss to Buffalo. They're still one of the better teams, but again, they've had that easy schedule. They ran into a good team. They were up 21-0 on the Bills at home. They choked that game away, lose to the Bills, and now they might not even win the division. Again, they're still one of the better teams, even though they've had an easy schedule, because if you're a good team, you have to beat those teams, right? What do you want the Patriots to lose some of those games so they can, not have a really good record even though they're playing bad teams. So they're still one of the better teams, but I think it's fair to put the Bills at 4 just above the Patriots at 5. I'd rather have the Bills in a playoff game over the Patriots right now. It's very close because the Patriots did beat the Bills in Buffalo earlier in the season. But I do think it's fair just off last week from what I saw the Bills making that comeback to put them just 1 spot over the Patriots. Then at 3, we have the Broncos going up 1 spot just because the Patriots went down, and also they got a very impressive win against Green Bay. I'm not going to take that away from them. Bo Nix played very good against a very good Packers defense. But if the Patriots would have beat the Bills, the Broncos might still be at 4. Who knows? But they go to 3 for their win against Green Bay, and the Patriots lost to Buffalo. At number 2, we have Seattle after their win against Indianapolis. It wasn't the prettiest win, don't get me wrong, but I had them at 3. And I do think I'd rather have the Seahawks over the Broncos. Two elite defenses, and I think I just slightly trust the Seahawks offense more than the Broncos offense, but it's very close because Seattle's offense hasn't played that good recently. Granted, they haven't had to play that good recently because of how good their defense has played. They're very close, very even at 2 and 3. But just because I had the Seahawks ranked higher going into this week, I gave them the nod just barely. And then obviously, as I said earlier, the Rams are the number 1 team. I think it's clear they were number 1 going into this week. They beat the Lions. Stafford continues to play great. Puka continues to play great. Defense didn't have the best performance, but it is the Lions' very good offense. So you can't. I'm not going to put too much weight into that defensive performance from the Rams. But yeah, I think it's clear and obvious that they are the best team in the league right now. So that are my power rankings for Week 16. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.